Hello, my friends. Christopher Check here, president of Catholic Answers, sitting in for your usual host, Cy Kellett, who is taking one more day off to spend with his lovely wife, Missy, who had 2 days off. And Cy said, I'm going to take 2 days off and spend them with my wife. So, Chris, would you host the show? And I said, as long as your listeners don't object. And he says, well, we won't even ask them. We'll just have you host the show. So if you object, I'm sorry. But the good news is Cy will be back in this chair tomorrow. And even better news, with me in the second hour is staff apologist here at Catholic Answers, Joe Heschmeyer, to answer any questions about the Catholic faith. And better news than that, in the first hour, to answer any questions about the Catholic faith, Joe Heschmeyer. Joe, we have you for 2 hours today.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
It's good to be here.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. And you can see how much I'm looking forward to it because I wore my Middle America shirt. And I thought we were going to do 2 hours of Middle America, Midwestern apologetics. I put my flannel shirt on here, and here you are looking, quite vanilla.
Yeah, I'm wearing like a plain purple button-down shirt that looks much more like a coastal elite, whereas you look like a cross between the Bounty paper towel guy and Freddy Krueger.
Right. Yeah, I got this. I got this flannel shirt for the exclusive reason to be on the radio with you when we did that panel with Cy. I did not own a flannel shirt. Because why would you?
When you had it on, I was actually surprised you owned a flannel shirt. So this answers some questions.
I ordered it strictly for that example. Wait a minute, I'm gonna stop. I do want to go in at length about the flannel shirt because I know that some of our Facebook followers like it when there's a good 30 minutes of banter before we get to questions. So, and I won't name any names, but I love looking at the comments where they say, "Oh, any minute now he's going to get to the questions," but. We'll come back to the flannel shirt in a moment, but first, I keep forgetting to do this. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884, or 888-31-TRUTH to ask your question about the Catholic faith with our guest, Joe Heschmeyer. So, Joe, this is what happened. You and Cy and I did that panel, I don't know, now maybe three weeks ago or something, and I thought that'd be funny if Cy and I wore flannel shirts, and I didn't have one, so I ordered one, and this is the one I chose, and Jacqueline hates it. She says she said, why at least could you not have let me pick one out? And so I showed her all the other choices, and she said, you picked the one that I loathe the most. So there we have it. So I think
you know what to get her for the next major holiday.
That's right.
Matching flannel shirts.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I can find one that matches her. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. The show is Catholic Answers Live. I'm Chris Check, sitting in for Cy Kellett, and we're here to answer any questions that you have about the Catholic faith. We welcome calls from Catholics and non-Catholics alike. Perhaps you have a question about Scripture, what the church teaches, why she teaches what she teaches, a church teaching that you disagree with, that you think is just nuts or cruel or nonsensical, a contradiction in Scripture or perceived contradiction in Scripture or something that doesn't make sense, or just you want something clarified about church teaching. Whatever it is, we're here to answer the question for you, and you can't ask for a better guy to answer them than Joe Heschmeyer. Joe, your latest book with us, I've got right here, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church.
Yes.
Oh, you've got one too. Have you read it?
I do. Briefly.
Yeah.
I think it could be better.
I love the title. And in fact, it was. The early church was the Catholic Church.
Yeah. So in the book, I'm looking especially at the first 200 years of Christianity and saying, well, and even less than that, really, I'm looking until about the year 200. So about the first 170 years of Christianity and saying, what do we see then? Do they look and sound like Protestants? Do they look and sound like Catholics? Do they look and, what do we find? And it turns out that they believed Catholic things. They celebrated in a Catholic way. They were institutionally the Catholic Church, and they believed the same things we believe. That institutionally the same thing is something that I think is important. You could imagine, like two denominations on like two ends of the world who both believe the same thing, but they're not the same. They just have similar beliefs.
Yes.
But on the other hand, you could talk about like, oh, well, the Church of England has gone crazy in the last 80 years or something. And you're talking about a particular entity or institution or society or group over time. There's some kind of organic continuity. And so my point is that there's both an organic continuity of this is still clearly the same church, and also it believes the same thing. And I think that often is missing when we talk about this, because Catholics will say, look at all of these passages where early Christians believe what we believe now. And Protestants will reply, well, look, here are these other passages that sound like they don't. And we don't have the conversation of, but is it actually the same church?
Yes.
And I think that's an important dimension of the conversation that often gets left out.
Yeah, and you're not the first person to do this. Cardinal Newman, or St. John Henry Newman, made the same deep dive that you did. Of course, he was an Anglican at the time that he did it. When he dug into a little bit later, the period of the Arians, of course, but that was the beginning for him that eventually led him into the Church of Rome.
Yeah, I mean, his famous saying that to be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant. He argues that's not just true for him. He argues that's actually true among the leading lights of Protestantism, that the reason Protestant apologists stopped making arguments from the Church Fathers and started making arguments from Bible alone was because they started to realize that the arguments from history were not working out for them.
Yes, there's a whole 16 centuries they have to ignore.
Right.
888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH, Catholic Answers Live. Shall we take a question, Joe?
Please.
Let's go to Henry in Houston, Texas. The school, the city of my school, listening on Catholic.com. Henry, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, thank you for having me. I have a question on the papacy. Actually, like two questions. One's kind of a big one, and then I have a small one about the early church, a question about it. And so if we can't get to the second one, that's okay, though. But the first question
This is great, Henry, because Joe actually has written a book on the papacy as well, and on the early church. So I think we're just going to use up the rest of the hour on your question, Henry.
Do you just want all of my books? Can we just give you everything I've ever written?
Yeah. Go ahead, Henry.
I would read them too. Thank you. Okay, so the first one's about Matthew 16, and so in some of the apologetics I've listened to, some people for infallibility of the Pope will simply mention the gates of hell shall not prevail against the Church. But to me, the most convincing is when Jesus says to Peter, "Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven," because that's like rabbinic language for interpreting Scripture and teaching Scripture. And so that to me is kind of the biggest one. Am I correct in that, or is there
Oh yeah, no, I think you're right on the right track. So the Jewish Encyclopedia, Rabbi Kaufman Kohler, has an article on binding and loosing, and you can find that online. And he quotes Josephus in there. And Josephus is describing the rise of the Pharisees under Queen Alexandra, and says that the Pharisees became the administrators of all public affairs, so as to be empowered to banish and readmit whom they pleased, as well as to loose and to bind. So this shows a kind of authority that they possessed as the kind of highest authority in the sphere. That's an important dimension. Whatever binding and loosening means, in the Jewish context, it's certainly an administrative kind of authority. But moreover, the binding and loosening power should be read in context with this open question about whether the governing authority in Judaism was infallible under certain conditions. And there's a couple indications in Scripture that they had the ability to make binding pronouncements. Now, this is, I think, important because it shows what we do and what we don't mean by infallibility. In Matthew 23, Jesus says the scribes and Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, so practice and observe whatever they tell you, but not what they do, for they preach but do not practice. So that makes it pretty clear that those in the position of authority, those sitting on the seat of Moses, it's not literal, it's the seat of authority, are able to bind in some way where you need to follow what they tell you. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be holy. It doesn't mean they're going to be saints and so on. It's possible to disagree with virtually everything they say and do, as we see from the rest of Jesus' interactions with the scribes and Pharisees. And yet he still gives this admonition about a kind of authority that they hold. That kind of authority, Jesus wouldn't be telling them to do something immoral. So I think that's kind of an important check with that. The other place to look is in John 11, when the Sanhedrin gets together and starts debating what to do in terms of like whether they should kill Jesus. Beginning in verse 45, one of them, we're told in verse 49, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all. You do not understand that it is expedient for you that one man should die for the people, that the whole nation should not perish." And John then says in verse 51, he did not say this of his own accord, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but to gather into one the children of God. That is a really fascinating kind of throwaway line, that being high priest that year, he prophesied. So we have those two indications, Matthew 23, John 11. Neither lays out very clearly the conditions or parameters, but both suggest that there were certain instances in which there was a kind of binding and loosening authority that the Jewish authorities held. And that was certainly the Jewish view. That is all strong indications. Like if you read Matthew 16 with that background, that this binding and loosening now passes on to the church collectively in Matthew 18 and to Peter individually in Matthew 16, then yeah, I see that as a good indication that both ecumenical councils and the Pope could act in this authoritative kind of fashion.
Henry, what's your second question?
So this is it okay if I ask a clarifying question real fast?
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead. Yep.
So one thing that kind of caught my eye about, like, even if people did say that the Jewish people weren't infallible, they were just authoritative. In Matthew 16, the fact that he's saying whatever you bind is bound in heaven, isn't that in a way he's giving a little bit more authority to Peter than he might have been to the Jewish people?
Yeah, I didn't even get into this whole dimension, but I'm going to briefly here. There are all of these Protestant attempts to make those words less powerful than they are. I don't mean like every Protestant does this. I mean, there are a lot of Protestant scholars and theologians who will say, oh, well, actually what this meant was whatever is bound in heaven will be bound on earth. But whether you say that heaven will always agree with Peter or Peter will always agree with heaven, either way, you end up in a place like infallibility. If those binding decisions are going to match the heavenly binding and the heavenly loosening, that's infallibility. To say, well, if Peter's right, then they'll be bound in heaven, it makes the promise meaningless. Because if I'm right, then I agree with heaven. If I'm wrong, I disagree with heaven. That is true of everyone.
Right.
And so if Jesus is giving Peter anything over what everyone has tautologically, then it seems like he's giving him something like infallibility.
What's your second question, Henry?
Thank you. So the second one is like for St. Ignatius in the letter to the Romans, he says that the Church of Rome is privileged to be unblemished. Is that something that you see people saying about other churches, or does that also kind of support papal infallibility in a unique way?
This is a good thing to know, because it is possible to push the case too far. Because you will sometimes find a very kind of reverential style of speaking, especially among some of the later Eastern writers, where, most reverend, most excellent. In the same way that if you call someone like Reverend so-and-so, you're not actually meaning that you necessarily revere them. You're honoring their office. They may be disgraceful and will still be Reverend so-and-so. That's a good thing to kind of keep it. Like, we don't want to push those arguments too far. Nevertheless, I do think there is an exalted way of describing the city of Rome and the Church of Rome and the Bishop of Rome that we don't find an easy parallel with to any other city. That in terms of the quantity, in terms of the degree to which this happens, it's harder to prove. You can't mathematically say, well, he says it's unblemished, therefore papacy necessarily follows, infallibility necessarily follows. But I think when you take the weight of the evidence, it certainly points in that direction. I would say other writers, like when Irenaeus in 180 talks about the necessity of agreeing with this church, that's clearer evidence, because that's the kind of thing you're not required to agree with the Church of Jerusalem or of Antioch or of Constantinople. You are required to agree with the Church of Rome.
Henry, the lovely Sarah from Behind the Glass is telling me I need to take a break, but if you give your mailing address to World's Greatest Call Screener, Edgar, he will send you a copy of both of Joe's books, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church and Pope Peter, and you can dive more deeply into both of these. My friends, if you're not going to get a free copy of Joe's book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, here's a way you can get 20 for an amazing deal. You buy a box of 20 and we will send them to you for just $3 a copy. So Joe, help me with the math. What is that, 60 bucks?
Oh,
look at that. See, yeah,
well done.
Yeah, well, I was an English major, although we did math in the artillery. Anyway, so here's the thing. $60 for 20 copies. Early Church Was the Catholic Church, and you can give them to all your friends for Easter. Go to shop.catholic.com. Right back after this.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
If you have a few minutes a day, you can become an EWTN media missionary in your parish, in your community, or through prayer. Be a part of Mother Angelica's mission. Place your gifts and strengths in service to Christ and His church by volunteering your time and sharing the eternal word with the world. Visit EWTNmissionaries.com today. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Eight 318-7884. 888-318-7884. The show is Catholic Answers Live. I'm Chris Check, president of Catholic Answers, sitting in for Cy Kellett, who will be back in this chair and behind this microphone tomorrow. My guest, staff apologist and great Midwesterner, Joe Heschmeyer. Are you originally from the Midwest, Joe?
I am. I'm from Kansas City.
Oh, yeah,
born
glory.
and raised.
Okay, yeah, because I know you're also, not only are you a Midwesterner, you're also a cosmopolitan. I mean, you lived in Washington, D.C., you lived in Rome, you're
I mean, even Kansas City is a polis in some ways. It has like 2 million people.
Well, and as you know, I was speaking at a conference in November in Kansas City, and I love the downtown of Kansas City, and I think it's been brought back kind of nicely. And the centerpiece of the downtown there, I was happy to discover, is a bar where you can go and drink beer and throw axes at the same time.
Yes.
So
we have a few of those places.
What
it helps. Yeah.
What else is needed?
You got to wear that shirt when you go do
Yeah,
that.
I'm going to. What else is needed in an urban environment? And God bless Kansans for mixing alcohol and axe throwing. It made perfect sense to me. Let's go.
Also, these places tend to have great names like Bury the Hatchet.
Oh, very clever.
Yes. So.
Let's go to Mike in Lakewood, New Jersey, watching on the Catholic Answers YouTube channel. Mike, welcome to Catholic Answers Live. Mike, where is Lakewood?
It's on the Jersey Shore. It's near like Seaside Heights, Toms River, Red Bank, that area.
Okay, so I have to ask you, are you a Southside Johnny fan, Mike?
No, he's kind of like an ersatz Bruce Springsteen. You might as well just get the real thing. If you wanna do that.
Stop right now. Southside Johnny is the godfather of that Asbury Park sound. You and I couldn't agree more, but because this is a Christian program, I'm going to let you ask your question anyway.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
So the papal bull Sicut Dudum, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, why does it only protect baptized citizens of the Canary Islands? If you look at paragraph 2, it talks about the protection that was offered by being baptized, protection from slavery, but it doesn't lament the enslavement of the people. And then in the 4th paragraph, it talks about how you're going to be excommunicated if they go ahead and enslave a baptized citizen of the Canary Islands. Nothing about the unbaptized.
Yeah, I think the Pope was particularly concerned with the horrors of what was being done, where baptism was being used as a bait, where people were being promised baptism and then they were being tricked and brought into slavery. That this was a twofold horror. One is that they had already had a lot of success in bringing people to Christ. They mentioned that in paragraph 1. But two, that they had started treating people like chattel, and that this was causing this real return to authentic evangelization, and that then they were using baptism as kind of a bait for freedom, and then none actually delivering on that promise. And Pope Eugene IV says that this offends the majesty of God. It puts souls in danger, and it causes no little harm to the Christian religion. So it's a particular scandal on top of slavery to work baptism into kind of the horrors of what you're doing. I think, to use maybe a modern analog, there are special penalties for people who commit sex crimes while employing the confessional, like using sex crimes that then are covered up with the seal of the confessional. You have a priest who's like a violator, and then he hears your confession as if you're the perpetrator. Those kind of things, when the sacraments are involved in your evil scheme, adds in a special affront. Like, you've already got the offense against man. You add a new affront against God when you start using the sacraments to further diabolical schemes. And so I think he is against slavery pretty clearly from the letter in general, but he's especially against this particular abuse, and he throws the full weight of the church against that. To prohibit slavery in general, certainly by modern standards, we would say that's a no-brainer. It's hard to make that an excommunicable offense because the boundary of servitude and slavery was not always as clear as maybe it could have been or should have been.
Mike, Steve Weidenkopf treats the question of the church and slavery at great length in a chapter of a book that he did for us. I can't recall, it's the 10 Myths or Real Catholic History or something like that. But tell your address to Edgar, and we will send a copy of that to you. We're going to try to get one more call here before the break. Thanks for calling, Mike. Anonymous in California, listening on Sirius 130 EWTN's satellite station. Anonymous, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hello. I have 2 questions for you.
Sure.
If you are in a gay marriage and you've repented, go to church every day, do you still have to get a divorce? And the second question is, if you are transsexual and repented and are living a celibate life, should you change your name back to what it was before?
Good questions, Anonymous. Let's see if we can help.
Great questions. I actually want to just flag this as an interesting interpretive thing. In Mark's gospel, it says whoever marries, divorces, and then remarries commits adultery. And in Matthew's gospel, it says the same thing, but it has this clause except for cause of porneia. And that's sometimes been translated as if it means that if your spouse cheats on you, you can divorce and remarry. And that's not what Jesus is talking about. He's saying that divorce is okay when there isn't a valid marriage, what the Jews would call porneia or fornication. So if you have an invalid marriage, and the Gentiles did, they would have marriages that the Jews wouldn't consider valid, then you could get legally divorced, and you're not undoing what God has bound together. So the first thing is just know that this is a situation where divorce is actually a good thing because God didn't bring the two together. The question of whether you have to is a trickier one. I would argue yes on the grounds of scandal, that if someone finds out that you're in a gay marriage, you are presenting to the world that this is a thing that's possible. It's not an issue the church has ever, to my knowledge, definitively said, but I think the logic of it is very clear. You can't live life in such a way that you suggest you're living in sin or lead others to the reasonable conclusion you're living in sin. For the same reason that one of the reasons you can't shack up with your girlfriend, even if you've resolved not to have sex, is for this same reason, that it gives the impression. I think the other thing is that you've put yourself in a near occasion. If this is a person you are sexually and romantically attracted to, staying under the same roof as them, being in this ongoing relationship with them, and thinking you can live chastely is not conducive to your spiritual growth. The other question you ask is a lot trickier in terms of how one comports himself. And I think some of these cases are going to be a little more case by case based on whether you've had surgery and the like. But you should strive to live the gender you were made by God. But you should also have a conversation with a well-formed priest who believes what the church believes. If you find yourself in a situation where you say, "Oh, this is not how I want to live. I want to live according to the design God actually gave me," and you can get better counsel in a more specific way.
Anonymous, I apologize. That music means we have to take a hard break. I hope that Joe was helpful to you. If you want to correspond a little bit more with us, shoot a note to radio@catholic.com, and we can put you in touch with Joe, and you can talk one-on-one. 888-318-7884. Right back after this.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Want to know more about the origins of the Catholic Church? Joe Heschmeyer explores the beginnings of Christianity in The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. Joe digs deep into the words and actions of those who lived right after the apostles to refute anti-Catholic claims of how the faith was lived back then. Order your copy of The Early Church Was the Catholic Church at shop.catholic.com or pick it up at a good Catholic bookstore.
In These 12, The Gospel Through the Apostles' Eyes, best-selling author Rod Bennett gives a riveting re-examination of gospel events from the ground floor perspective of Christ's own hand-picked successors. In his trademark storytelling style, Bennett movingly depicts what it was like for the apostles to witness Jesus' teaching and miracles up close. Why did he call them, and what did he intend for them to do? Order your copy of These 12 today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Miss a show? Make sure to catch up by downloading the podcast, available online at Catholic.com.
This is Dr. David Anders. Is God an angry God?
We answer questions like these every day on Call to Communion, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern.
Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
Wednesday of the fifth week of Lent, or as we used to say, Passion Week, right, Joe? I think even, I know our friends in the Ordinariate of the Chair of Peter still use that expression. And then, of course, all of the Ecclesia Dei communities that still say the Old Rite, and the priests who say the Old Rite, of course, refer to this as Passion Week. And we are getting very close to the holiest days of the year.
Indeed. I think even a lot of non-Catholics use Passion Week or Passiontide, old school Lutherans, Anglicans, and the like.
Yeah. You still hear people say Spy Wednesday.
I love Spy Wednesday.
I do too.
I mean, it's a dark day, but I like the name.
Yeah. Now you have to tell people what Spy Wednesday is.
Yeah, it's dark because it's about Judas and his betrayal.
Right.
And when you realize that Judas is a spy, you're like, oh, yeah, the name kind of makes sense. We always talk about him as a traitor, but he's a spy. He's an undercover agent, basically.
That sounds like one of those things with pretty much an Anglo-Saxon origin. That sounds like something that must come out of the English tradition. Spy.
I assume. I don't know. It sounds like, Shrove Tuesday or Pancake Tuesday. Like those things where you get these delightful
or
little
Maundy
names.
Thursday.
Yes.
Yeah. That is one thing that the Anglicans have kept. The cool names for those days. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of traditional Anglicanism. Well, here, I'll give you a strange one. Rood screens.
Right.
So Council of Trent gets rid of the rood screen to, make the people better full and active participants in the liturgy or something. And the English who'd broken off, a lot of their older churches still have them. So it's funny that you can actually recover certain aspects of the Western Catholic tradition by looking at these old churches that haven't been updated in the post-Tridentine Recavations.
And if you really want to add to the mystery of these things, visit an Anglo-Catholic church sometime. I had very, very dear friends, one still with us, in the Sheboygan, Wisconsin area, where there is one of these Anglo-Catholic churches. Of course, beautiful rood screen, by the way, carved in wood. But also a statue of the Little Flower.
Wow.
Yeah.
It doesn't shock me because I'm near the largest Methodist church in the country, and they have a stained glass window of Pope John the 23rd.
Yeah. There you go. Kathleen,
so we're past the days of like Luther declaring the Pope an Antichrist.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And he's not an anti-pope, by the way, just to be clear.
Correct.
You can watch Joe's Catholic Answers Focus explaining that very question. Kathleen in Westlake, Ohio, listening on The Rock. Kathleen, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Oh, thank you.
Kathleen, what's your question?
What's the same question? I think I told you I wrote a book called A Healing Book for Churches, and I did a lot of research, and I found out that no one knew, I don't know if you recall, you and I talked, that no one knew women had ovaries until the 1600s. At that time, a famous researcher, his name was René de Graaf, discovered that women had ovaries. But until then, during the entire time of Christ, prior to the time of Christ, everyone thought, they knew by observation that sperm had lumps in it, and the assumption was tiny babies were in the sperm. So for two men,
Kathleen, Kathleen,
sperm,
okay, just and grateful for the history of the advances in our understandings of human reproduction. There are 7, 8, 9 people behind you, and if you had a question that we could help you with, we'd like to hear that if we can.
The question is, why are the doors of the Catholic Church still locked against LGBTQ people marrying and having the sacrament of marriage and the protection of marriage?
All right, very good.
Oh, great.
Joe.
Great. I appreciate the question. The first answer to that comes with, what is marriage? And if it doesn't even take understanding a lot of Catholic theology to answer that question, if you were to ask an educated pagan before the time of Christ, they could tell you that marriage was inseparable from the idea of family. That was not homophobia or anything. Look at the ancient Greeks. The ancient Greeks had regularized, pederastic and homosexual relationships between males. But they still viewed marriage as something that could only be done between a man and a woman, because only a man and a woman can have babies. You didn't need to know about ovaries or the like to know all of that. I mean, someone who's just mildly aware of where babies come from gets that much. And so the reason marriage exists as a social institution, and marriage is the only one of the sacraments that's older than Christianity. So that we'll start there. Why does it exist? Well, because if you have a child born without a mother and a father, to a single mother, to a mother who's been abandoned, that's a worse outcome for her. It's a worse outcome for the child. And it leads to bad outcomes all the way around. So marriage is a really important stabilizing social institution, and really is the core building block of society. 2 men or 2 women who are romantically attracted to each other are incapable of doing that sort of thing. And so the door is not some arbitrary decision by the church. The door is the door of nature that's closed and locked. No matter what, we can say 2 men can now be husband and husband, just as we can say that a husband can give birth to a child, but we're not really changing the course of nature. That's something beyond us. So that's not something either on the level of divine revelation or in the level of nature that we could possibly change. It would involve changing the reality of male-female difference. It would involve changing the reality of where babies come from, and the like. And so the short answer is, it is impossible.
How's that, Kathleen?
Okay, what you're saying is not true. None of what he said is true.
Well, actually,
none of it.
All right. Well,
none of it.
Let's just pick one or two things and see if we can get Joe to respond.
Okay. Okay. One of the things he said was that two men and two women united in marriage could not provide the nurturing that's required for a baby to develop normally.
Yeah.
No.
Actually,
I'm not saying that.
Joe did not say that.
Two men and women couldn't biologically procreate. Any number of situations you could imagine where, like, you could get a group of 7 friends to agree to raise a baby together, and the baby might be loved. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, can 2 men have a baby? Can 2 women have a baby? And the answer is no.
So that
I'm not knocking the nurturing ability of someone who's
a family. Are you saying
they
that
cannot
if someone cannot produce a baby, then they can't really form a family?
I'm saying that the reason marriage exists is inseparable from procreation. That the potential to have children has always been viewed as an essential characteristic of what it is to have a family, or what it is to have a marriage, excuse me. That someone who is of the same sex, who couldn't possibly have a child with the person they're talking about getting married to. So the real question is, what then is marriage? Is marriage just, I like this person a lot and want to spend the rest of my life with them? You don't need marriage for that. I've got friends who I could see, I could live as roommates with this person forever. And that's not marriage, though. That marriage is, of its essence, related to the creation of a family. Whether or not a couple ever has a child or not doesn't change that reality. The potential to do so is present for a heterosexual couple in a way it isn't for a homosexual couple.
Kathleen, I'd like to give you a chance to just, if you could respond really quickly, but I want to try to get one more call in before the break. So if you just wanted to have a follow-up, and then we do need to go along.
Yes, I will. Jesus never mentioned this topic, and oftentimes he's quoted as that one scripture where he defines marriage, but he doesn't. Mm-hmm. He's actually responding to a question about whether or not a man could put away his wife. However, the purpose of marriage is not only to procreate, and procreation does not mean marriage.
Joe?
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with half of what you said. Certainly, marriage is more than just procreation and the capacity to procreate. And I never suggested otherwise. I only suggested if you want to understand what marriage is, that's inseparable from the capacity to procreate. That if you want to understand why every society has marriage, that's where that came from, just historically speaking. And you don't even have to turn to the New Testament for that. As for Jesus not mentioning it, I think you're mistaken about Matthew 17. But St. Paul is also clear about the immorality of homosexual acts. But the fact that homosexual acts are immoral is not the reason why homosexual marriage is impossible. Homosexual marriage would be impossible even if homosexual acts were fine. The ancient Greeks thought homosexual acts were fine and still realized that 2 men couldn't get married because that's not what marriage is.
Kathleen, we are going to move on. If you give your mailing address to Edgar, we have a 20 Answers booklet on marriage that will help you get a good understanding of what the church teaches, why she teaches it on this question. And I invite you to call back anytime. Dominic in New Jersey, watching on YouTube. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hey, thanks so much for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, my question, Joe, is I've heard from a few people, I don't know if this is true or not, that Eastern Catholics, they believe different things, like they deny the filioque, they deny the hypostatic union, things like that. So my question is, 1, is that true? And 2, if it is, then what does the church have to affirm to be Catholic?
Yeah, they don't deny the hypostatic union. That would be a huge issue. With the filioque, for those who aren't familiar, it's the idea that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son, that line in the Creed. That line in the Creed is true, but it's controversial for two reasons. One, it's capable of being misunderstood, and two, it was added by some Spanish bishops after an ecumenical council. Like, it's not in the original form of the creed. And so a lot of Easterners were both outraged that these Western bishops had the gall to like add a line to the creed. They were also worried that it suggested that there were two sources from which the Holy Spirit came. In what's called the Union of Brest, the Eastern churches agree to the formulation that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father through the Son, which is what the Filioque was trying to express. But that formulation, that the Spirit proceeds from the Father through the Son, makes it clear that there's not two principles of origin and eliminates the ambiguity that was there, especially in the Greek. So on that issue, I think you'll find Eastern Catholics tend not to use the Filioque. The Catholic Church in Greece, even the Western Catholics, don't use the Filioque as trying to avoid anything that may be a stumbling block to their Eastern Orthodox neighbors. But you can believe everything in the Filioque without thinking that it needs to be prayed as part of the creed. You could just say, well, I like the original creed better. And in certain ecumenical contexts, the creed will even be prayed without the Filioque present. So I'd say that's the difference from a typical East-West perspective. I guess on top of that, it's probably worth mentioning that just as you'll find Western Catholics who have beliefs that may not perfectly match the church, you will find Eastern Catholics who sometimes have beliefs that don't perfectly match the church as well.
Does that clear that up, Dominic?
Yeah, thanks so much for that answer.
Okay, for sure. My friends, shop.catholic.com. Everything is on sale at the Catholic Answers shop site, 10 to 25% off. And any course in the School of Apologetics right now, the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics, is 50% off. So those are a whale of a deal. Visit shop.catholic.com. Be back right after this.
Hang on. We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Do you love sharing the gospel and want to learn to be more effective? Join the St. Paul Street Evangelization online School of Evangelization. You will learn to build bridges of trust and make disciples by befriending strangers, proclaiming the gospel, inviting people to the church, and praying with others. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you are unable to give, we'll give you a membership at no cost. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
I'm continually amazed and humbled at the way God can work through me to help so many people. Although I have no idea what the callers' questions will be that day, I trust that the Holy Spirit can use my education and experience to guide, challenge, or comfort those who call.
Mast Appeal with Colleen Kelly Mast. Saturday morning, 9 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Eight 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. Chris Check sitting in for Cy Kellett on Catholic Answers Live. My guest, Joe Heschmeyer, for another 15 minutes, and then for another hour. So my friends, if you, and Gloria, Rebecca, Lindsay, Dwayne, hang on. Even if we don't get to you in this hour, we will get to you in the second hour, and plenty of open lines. So please don't hesitate to call. Quick thing, Joe, before we go back to calls. Between now and Easter, Catholic Answers is offering a special deal to anyone who joins the Catholic Answers 350 Society 315. Society 315 are our monthly givers who support us at the level of $10 or more a month. If you join the Society 315 before Easter, we will also give you a premium subscription to the Hallow app. Do you have the Hallow app, Joe?
I do have the Hallow app.
Yeah. So it's a wonderful app of spiritual direction and meditations and prayer. And we're partnering with the great folks at Hallow to make it available for free to anyone who joins the 315 Society between now and Easter. Also, if you join the Society 315, you get $70 off of the Catholic Answers Conference, CatholicAnswersConference.com. So what a bargain. Join CA Society 315 today, CASociety315.com, and take advantage of that offer. Granger in Lincoln, Nebraska, one of the best bishops in the history of the Catholic Church in Lincoln, Nebraska. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. How can we help?
So my question came to me today. I have a Muslim friend and coworker asked me, why do Catholics not eat meat on Fridays? And I was I researched it today, and I was kind of wondering if there was maybe the early church origins, and maybe if there's some sort of Old Testament or just any biblical roots.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the kind of surface level biblical answer, meaning like, I'll go explain what I mean in a second. In Matthew 6, Jesus proposes 3 spiritual tools: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And he does them with a formulation of what to do when you pray, when you fast, when you give alms. And so these are not optional parts of the spiritual life. These are the 3 tools that we've been given. Now that's true year round, that we should regularly have recourse to prayer. We should regularly be giving alms. We should regularly be fasting. And this is reinforced in Matthew 9 when Jesus is asked about fasting. And he responds, can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. That fasting is part of the Christian dispensation between the ascension and the second coming. So that's why we fast. And then we know that fasts were not just like individual things. Now, fasting individually is great. It's good. If you're at a place in life where you say, tomorrow I'm going to have a fast day for this particular cause, or whatever it is, that's great. I don't mean to diminish that at all. In addition to that, there were also these corporate fasts where they would call a fast. The Jews would do this. Even the pagans would do this. For instance, in the book of Jonah, when Jonah preaches to the Ninevites, a fast is called and everybody fasts. And so these days of collective, like corporate church-wide fasting, those are the biblical kind of roots for it. And why Friday? Well, because of Good Friday. And why during Lent? Well, because of that 40 days of preparation. You see Jesus preparing for his ministry with a 40-day period of serious fasting in the desert. And likewise, we have a 40-day period that's more penitential in that we kind of ramp the fasting up. That the form Lent has taken has changed somewhat throughout the course of the church. There were different local practices. There was sometimes a 40-hour fast where no one would eat anything or drink anything for 40 hours before Easter. A 40-day kind of lighter fast is what we do here. Western Catholics tend to have a lighter one than Eastern Catholics, and Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox and the like do variations on that practice. But that's the core of why we do what we do.
But Joe,
and then the very
go ahead. Well, I was just going to the particular question of abstinence from meat on Fridays.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I was thinking about just fasting in general.
That's okay because everybody needs to fast, and it's good that you told us why.
Yeah. So I think my understanding is that it's connected between the flesh offered on the cross for the world and the flesh that we abstain from, which is also why fish is allowed, because in Latin, carne doesn't include fish. And there's all sorts of conspiracy theories about like fishermen getting an exemption in or something like that. And it's just like, no. I mean, go read like a menu at an Italian restaurant and you've got like your carne and your pesce. You've got your meats and your fishes. Those are just 2 different kind of creatures. And carne is what we're giving up. And we're giving it up as a sort of death to our own flesh. The last point here, there's a sort of pun with Carnival. And so you may know that like the period before Lent is called Carnival, which is farewell to the flesh.
Right.
And it's both a putting away of the meat, but also putting away of like fleshly living.
Granger, I have a longer article about abstaining from fasting generally and abstaining from meat on Fridays in the latest issue of Catholic Answers magazine, and we'll send you a copy of that if you give your address to Edgar. There were, as Joe indicated, prior to 1966, well, first of all, there were 53 fast days throughout the year, and then every single Friday, not just Fridays in Lent, were fast days. Were abstinence days, abstinence from flesh meat, with one exception. Joe, Pius XII said it was
the day after Thanksgiving.
Yes, said you could. Right. And my theory there is because eating turkey is penance, sufficient, right? So that's like, no, not the upcoming issue, Edgar, the current one. Yeah. Dwayne in Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri. You're on Catholic Answers Live.
Joe, fellow Ichabod, fellow lawyer.
Hey,
glad to talk to you.
Small world. Go Bodge.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Absolutely. Hey, a question I had for you was about elders. I have a lot of evangelical friends here at the lake, and they're always talking about elders, and they're trying to recreate the early church and plurality of elders, but we never talk about elders. I've surmised that are priests elders, or what's the parallel
They
there?
are.
Where are elders?
You're right on the money.
Great, we can go to the next question.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
All right.
You answered your own question, Dwayne.
The Greek word for elder is presbyteros, and that becomes shortened in Latin to prester. Like it becomes presbyter, and that becomes prester, and that becomes priest.
But their elders don't seem to have priestly roles or
that's true.
But that's because
roles. Between you and me and anyone listening, their elders aren't the same as biblical elders. That when you see the elders in like the book of James, they're praying over people and they're giving them sacraments and such. And when like that's what the elders of old did. You find First Clement in 96 AD making this comparison between the structure of the Old Testament that had high priests, and Levites, and the structure of the New Testament that has bishop, presbyters, we'd now say priests, and deacons. And it's very clear that he views the presbyters as fulfilling the Old Testament priesthood. And there's all sorts of biblical support for this as well. Isaiah 66 talks about the coming together of the Gentiles and how the Gentiles are going to come to God, and some of them will be called as priests and Levites. Now, obviously, they're not literally going to be Levites. This is talking about how some of the Gentiles will become priests and deacons, presbyters and deacons if you prefer. But it's a fulfillment of the Old Testament priestly structure in the New Testament. This is something that was prophesied in the Old Testament and that we see in the New Testament. This is why we have three forms of governance: a bishop, priest, deacon, whereas most Protestants only have two. They'll have elders and deacons.
What do you think, Dwayne?
Great. No, that's great. Thank you very much.
All right. Very good. Gloria in Houston, Texas. Gloria, if we don't get to the answer to your question, we will pick you up in the second hour. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Thank you. Yes.
Go ahead.
My question is, yes, sir. My question is, I'm calling in reference to my son, who was Catholic and now a non-practicing Catholic, and he became because he married when he married his first wife, who was not Catholic, and then he kind of got with her and didn't practice Catholicism, and now he's divorced. He's been divorced, and he has remarried, but not in the church. So I want to know how we can.
Yeah, Gloria, we're gonna unpack this for you at the beginning of the second hour. So all I need you to do is hold the line for about 6 minutes, I think, and then we'll be able to give you a more fulsome response, because we want to be able to help you insofar as we can. My friends, The show is Catholic Answers Live. I am Chris Check, setting in for Cy Kellett, who will be back in this chair tomorrow. We have a whole hour of open forum coming up with staff apologist Joe Heschmeyer right after this break. It's Wednesday in Passiontide. We are a week away from the Triduum, holiest days of the year. And my prayer for you all listening is that you are having a fruitful and grace-filled Lent, and that God gives you the graces to really push it across the finish line. Take advantage of that exhortation that the church gives us at this time of year for fasting, prayer, and abstinence. In the previous hour, my friend Joe Heschmeyer here was talking about 40-hour fasts. There may be a few of you listening for whom that could be a real opportunity there. I know a guy, Joe Heschmeyer, who does the 40-hour fast. He starts on Thursday night, and then he doesn't eat until Saturday the next day. And
wow.
Yeah. And
He's
not a young
impressive.
man. He's not a young. Yeah. No.
I tried that once in college. It did not go well.
Yeah. Well, check with your doctor first, or I'll probably get a bunch of mail now. The show is Catholic Answers Live. My name is Chris. I have to say, Joe, I asked Darren, the producer. Every time my guest hosts the show, I ask him for notes, and he says, "Oh, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job." And it's like, what's he going to say to the president? So I'm like, "No, Darren, really, please tell me." And he says, "Okay, well, you have to mix it up when you come in, after each segment or something. You can't just come in and say Catholic Answers Live or something." So that's why I led with that stream of consciousness little bit there about. So
thanks,
Darren. Yeah, we see that really worked well. Chris Check sitting in for Cy Kellett, who will be back here tomorrow. Catholic Answers Live is the show. The phone number 888-318-7884. 888-31-TRUTH. Any question at all about the Catholic faith for the next hour? Gloria in Houston. You still there, Gloria?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you for hanging on. So I'm going to summarize very quickly. You had a son who married outside the Catholic Church. He married a non-Catholic. He is now divorced from this woman. What does he need to do to...
Well, and he got remarried, right?
Oh, is he remarried, Gloria?
Yes, and he got remarried.
And he is not
Yes,
practicing.
that is correct.
And he's not practicing the faith. Is that correct?
No, but he goes to mass with his wife. His wife is Catholic. His current wife is Catholic.
Okay. All right. There's a few things we need to unwind here.
Yeah. So in terms of what does he need to do? Well, one thing is come to believe what the church believes if he doesn't, and then follow that with a trip to the confessional to ask for forgiveness for whatever past sins, relationships that weren't good in the eyes of God and the like. But then in terms of sorting out the marriage situation, he'll have to get an annulment. He'll take the case before an annulment tribunal, and they'll take a look and say, was the first marriage valid or not? And is the second marriage valid or not? Because the principle is that what God has joined together, man can't separate. But we don't always know, has God joined this together? And so the church will make an educated judgment about that based on the situation. Was he in a place where he could marry freely? Certainly, someone who is Catholic is bound to get married in the Catholic Church without a dispensation. And so if he attempted marriage outside the church, that's what's called the defect of form. And those are pretty easy cases where the annulment will say there's not a valid marriage here. So I don't know the situation with the first attempt at marriage, if he did that within the church or if he did that outside the church. First time he tried to get married, was that in the church?
The first marriage was outside the church, so and to a non-Catholic, but the important thing here is outside the church. So, Joe, as described to us, that would be invalid.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it would be pretty easy for a tribunal to say, this has a defective form, so he's not bound by this prior union, so he can have a valid Catholic marriage to his Catholic wife, which is great news. And they would convalidate the marriage. They would do perhaps what's called a radical signation or a healing of the roots, where they really restore and elevate this union and give it a sacramental character. Does that make any sense, Gloria? Does that help?
Yes, and just to reiterate what you said, or repeat what you said, he can then go to our priest. I'm a member of the church that he attends, Catholic Church, now along with his wife. So
he can always go with her, but in terms of going up for communion, in terms of doing all of that, having him go to the priest and saying, hey, here's the situation. I need an annulment. There's a defect of form is the technical term. He doesn't even need to remember that. The priest will understand. And the priest can get him sorted out by turning it over to the canon lawyer for the diocese. And within a fairly short period of time, they'll get back to him and say, yeah, that wasn't a valid marriage. And then they can bless his union with the woman he's with right now and give it a sacramental character.
Okay, Gloria?
Okay. Yes, sir. One last question.
Sure.
Will he have to get an annulment? It's quite painful.
Yes, for the first one. Because all an annulment does, it declares that the first one was not a sacramental marriage. It was not a marriage in the eyes of God. Because if it was, he would still be bound by that. He would still be married to her.
Yeah, and Gloria, in the specific case of your son, as you are describing it to Joe and me, in fact, this came up on the show yesterday with Tim Staples. You might go back and find yesterday's show, the second hour, because Tim talked about this as well. The Catholics, baptized Catholics, are bound to be married in the Catholic Church unless they get a dispensation of form, which we don't know. Maybe your son did, but we're guessing he probably didn't. But the tribunal will answer that. Go ahead.
Yes. Oh, I can vouch that he's been Catholic from baptism.
Right. Very good.
His first marriage.
Good. And so it sounds as if his first marriage was not a valid marriage, but the church still needs to review it to be certain of that before they will give that declaration of nullity. Your parish priest can get all this in motion, and as Joe says, I think fairly quickly. This is not a complicated one.
Yeah.
Okay, I am grateful. I thank you, and I will give this information to him tonight. He'll be very happy. He calls me every day to ask me if I have, found out, because I am, I've been a Catholic from my birth, and so after with baptism on until this point. I'm 75, so he's counting on me, but I'm not the one. So I knew you would be able to answer the question.
Right, and Gloria,
can I say something very quickly here? You've got a son who still calls you every day and is trying to get right with the church. I think you raised your son right.
Amen.
I just want to give you.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you.
Amen. Gloria, if your son wants to correspond with one of the apologists on staff here at Catholic Answers, and we can go in a little bit more detail or talk to him on the phone, send an email to radio@catholic.com, and then we'll get him in touch with one of the apologists on the staff here and get it sorted out.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
But yes, sir. Oh, I appreciate it so very much.
Of course. God bless you, Gloria. Pray for Catholic Answers. Let's go to Rebecca in Ottawa, Canada, watching on YouTube. Rebecca, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course.
So my question, I'm currently converting to the Catholic Church.
Welcome.
But I do have. Thank you.
Are you? Will you be received into the church at the Easter Vigil? At the Easter Vigil?
Well, basically, I was born in the Catholic Church, but I became Protestant. When I came back, when I actually started, having a relationship with, understanding Jesus and how much he loves me, and then my brother is a very, very hardcore Catholic, but by the grace of God, God brought me back to the church.
Glory. Good.
That's wonderful.
Good. How can we help?
And so, I do still have some stumbling blocks, especially with Mary, and so one of the things though is the miraculous medals. I really do struggle with them because I don't know if I'm mistaken or is it maybe just in practice something's wrong, but most of the time, when I do hear about people wearing the miraculous medal, the Mary one, they often attribute kind of protection over the medal, and to me, I can understand icons, because as humans we do need we are visual, right? But for miracle medals, I find that it's superstition,
Yeah. That's a wonderful question.
That is a very good question.
And you're not the only one who is concerned about this, and actually with good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing is it can be superstitious. If you use a miraculous metal like a rabbit's foot or something like that, then that's superstitious. But the idea that physical things can be used by God for healing in a reliable way. The example I'm thinking of here is the healing pool in Bethesda in John 5. So if you look at John 5, Jesus goes to this pool at Bethesda where there are all of these sick people who are trying to get healed. Well, what are they trying to do? Well, there's miraculous springs. There's miraculous waters there. And so Jesus has this conversation with the guy who's there, and he says, well, do you want to be healed? And the sick man says, sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is troubled, and while I'm going, another steps down before me. And Jesus tells him to get up and walk. He doesn't say, hey, that's superstitious. You can't do that. Because it's part of Christianity that God works through these things, through stuff. So that would be one place I would look. The other one is in Acts 19, verse 11 and 12, where it says that God did extraordinary miracles by the hands of Paul, so that handkerchiefs or aprons were carried away from his body to the sick, and diseases left them, and the evil spirits came out of them. So we know from Scripture that there would be physical objects associated with the saints that would then go and have these healing properties, that people could take them and use them for spiritual and physical protection as well. That's the idea with miraculous metals. And I've actually been on a similar journey in terms of thinking miraculous metals were really weird, and then I kind of fell in love with the idea. And one day I was at Mass, and they were doing a miraculous metal devotion beforehand, and my heart is softened to it. And I was dating a girl who was a convert from Protestantism at the time. And I said a little prayer like, it'd be great to have a miraculous metal. Not even a prayer, more of like a half-formed thought. And then I walked to the back of the church, and there was one there just sitting there for the taking. And so it's one of those things where, like, I've seen miracles with the miraculous metal, and so I know it's weird. I know it doesn't fit into kind of like a modern 21st century idea of what Christianity should look like, and it feels much more like ancient and weird and almost superstitious. But it really is just this gritty incarnational form of Christianity. In the same way that, like, taking handkerchiefs and aprons to the sick, it's really weird. But that's how God chooses to work.
How about that, Rebecca?
Yeah, the last thing, maybe I should mention this. You're not required to, like, buy into the miraculous metal or anything like that. Don't let that be an obstacle to your conversion. Like, if you don't agree with whatever I just said, you're free to say that's not for me, because all of that's at the level of private devotion.
Okay, Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Rebecca, you mentioned also that Mary generally was giving you some pause. If you give your mailing address to Edgar, the world's best call screener, we'll send you a copy of Tim Staples' book, Behold Your Mother, which goes through the Marian dogmas, and I think is absolutely the best book of its kind written for the general audience. So happy to send that to you.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're in our prayers. Michelle in New Jersey, watching on YouTube. We're getting a lot of calls from New Jersey, Joe. Is it you? Do you attract people from New Jersey?
I don't know. I hope the answer to that is yes.
My wife is from New Jersey, by the way. I just want to say I'm very grateful to this
I guess
state.
it's you. You clearly have a track record of attracting people from New Jersey.
Yeah. Michelle, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Pardon me if this is like a fourth grade question.
There are no fourth grade questions here.
Okay.
Even the fourth graders don't have fourth grade questions. Oh my gosh.
Go ahead, dear.
When we die, do we go to heaven now or after the final judgment?
Yeah, actually, a lot of people have puzzled hard over this question, Michelle. So this is not a fourth grade question. And by the way, there is an answer.
A Pope screwed this up once.
Yeah, that's right.
Pope John the 22nd.
Yeah.
So the short answer is both. Well, let me explain what I mean by that. When we die now, the soul, if it's purified, I mean, you might have to go through purgatory, but we'll leave that aside for a second, right? But the soul that's in right relationship with God immediately enjoys the beatific vision. You immediately enjoy the presence of God, and you have what's called the individual judgment or personal judgment. You are judged, and you're either sent to heaven or hell upon the moment of death. Scripture says you die once and face judgment. There is additionally the general judgment that Jesus speaks about, coming and separating the sheep and the goats. And that's a judgment of the nations where everyone is judged together after all of the individual judgment has been done at the end of time. This is also the moment of the bodily resurrection. And so when you die, like, your soul is enjoying the presence of God, but you are not just your soul. You are soul and body together. And so you will still be both happy and in a certain way incomplete in heaven before the general resurrection. The incompleteness is that you won't be fully human and in the full sense of the term. The saints in heaven now don't enjoy the soul-body union. It's the only thing we have that they don't have, besides like sin and trouble and strife. But the only good thing we have that they don't have is the soul-body union, and they will get that again after the general judgment.
Okay, Michelle?
Or at the time of the general judgment. Does that help?
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're so good, Joe.
He
Thank
is
you
good.
so much.
He is good.
That leaves more questions about purgatory, but I'll call back another day.
Well, I'll tell you what, Michelle, we're going to send you a copy of Carlo Broussard's book on purgatory. Purgatory is for real, and that's the good news. I'm paraphrasing the title, but I think it's something like that. So
Purgatory is for real, yeah.
Yeah, purgatory is for real, and that's that. And thanks be to God. Give your address to Edgar, world's best call screener, and he will send you that book. My friends, we got to take a quick break before we do. Everything at shop.catholic.com, the Catholic Answer store, is on sale right now. It's our Easter sale, 10 to 25% off. But wait, there's more. And it's not steak knives. It's better. We will give you free shipping on orders over $50 if you live in the continental United States. And this includes our friends in New Jersey. So, free shipping on orders over $50. Now, you're saying to yourself, Chris, I'm not going to buy $50 worth of product. Well, actually, if you go to shop.catholic.com and take advantage of these discounts, you probably will. But let's just say you can't find $50 worth of books on there. I think you will. But let's just say you can't. We will only charge you $5 flat rate shipping on your order. What a great deal. Just in time for Easter. Right back after this.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features daily Mass, prayers, articles, and meditations in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church. On the web at magnificat.com.
Thank you for all the work that you've done. I work at it, and then it's like, I stop, and then I start, and then I stop. You've done so much, and thank you for everything you do. And thank you, EWTN. I mean, I had a line that I could spread at work today from what I heard this morning on EWTN, that it took a woman to put Jesus on the earth.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
Catholic Answers Live, 888-318-7884, 888-31 Truth. Chris Check, president of Catholic Answers, sitting in for Cy Kellett, host of Catholic Answers Live, spending a day with his beautiful wife, Missy, back in this chair tomorrow with all of his good humor, good looks, wit, etc. You only got me for 40 more minutes. Let's go to Maddie in Ohio, listening on EWTN Radio. Maddie, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Well, hello. How are you doing
We're
today?
doing well.
Alrighty. So my question has to do with the concept of original sin.
Sure.
My thought process on it is the sins of the Father don't weigh on the Son. I understand death is, part of the fall. But the part that I don't get is how come we're guilty for what Adam and Eve did and we're supposed to share the blame even though we're not the ones who directly did it?
I know.
Yeah. That's rough.
Yeah, 'cause I'm an Orthodox Christian now. I grew up Catholic.
Right.
But, I was just curious from the Catholic perspective now as an adult, understanding how it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating because in Eden, right, there's a good relationship, a rightly ordered relationship between man and God, between man and man, or man and woman, literally, between Adam and Eve, between man and creation, and between man and himself. All of those get corrupted with the fall. That our relationship with God is damaged, our relationship with each other is damaged, our relationship with ourself is damaged, the intellect is darkened, the passions are drawn to concupiscence, our relationship to creation is darkened as well, or corrupted as well. So we can talk about creation groaning in anticipation of its redemption, as St. Paul describes. That fourfold relationality is all marred. We also lose these preternatural gifts that Adam and Eve had, that were these particular gifts on top of human nature that they lost without losing anything of what it is to be human. And so that's the kind of corruption we're talking about. It's not that there's sin in the sense of juridical guilt. It's that original sin is that we have this orientation away from God. We have a desire for what doesn't actually satisfy us. We have a desire for what doesn't actually make us happy. And anyone, Christian or non-Christian, who's ever tried to live well knows that struggle, right? Like, try to eat right, try to live right, try to, do whatever, exercise, do all these things you're supposed to do. They're hard, they're frustrating, they're painful, and they shouldn't be. If you think about like how easy it is in some ways, well, what's a bird's natural fulfillment? Look how easily a bird does those things. Now think about our natural fulfillment. What actually makes us happy? And it's like, well, virtue and being in right relationship with God, ourselves, others, and creation. And none of those come easily to us. And that's what we mean by original sin. That it is hard for humans to be human in a way it's not hard for like an animal to be an animal.
What do you think, Maddie?
That does make sense. I can follow along with that.
Oh,
I just, when I was a kid, I was pretty much told that because they did it, we have to make up for it in a way.
Well, God had given them special benefits and just said, here's the condition. And they broke the one condition. And so in that sense, we don't get the easy path that God was going to lay out for them. We don't have to view that as God personally punishing us. We weren't entitled to Eden in the first place, but we do experience other people's bad actions in our own lives. And there's 1,000 other ways where like other people's bad actions make our life harder, like the DMV or something, where it seems like institutionalized other people's bad actions just impeding on mine. Yeah. I just had to get my license renewed. It actually wasn't bad. I just like dreaded every time.
I understand.
But it's, like drive in traffic and tell me other people's bad decisions don't impact yours. Like that is just the reality. And the positive side of that, it's not all bad. It shows that we are one people, we are united. And it's precisely because of that oneness, that unity, that human unity, that God can become man and redeem man. Like he can redeem all of humanity because of that very unity that is so often so frustrating for us. In contrast, like the angels don't have that. Angels are not related to each other. Each one is a special act of creation. And so if God became like one angel, he wouldn't become any other angel. Do you see what I mean? The unity that both is frustrating with original sin is also the route by which God heals and restores us.
Maddie,
okay, that makes more sense.
Maddie, you mentioned at the start of the call that you were a Catholic, and now you're Eastern Orthodox.
Yeah.
Is there something?
I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, is there a particular teaching of the church that's that we can clarify for you, or perhaps send you something to read?
I mean, I'm willing to read anything if you want to send it to me. I mean, I'm not against Catholicism or anything like that. It's just that, I had a lot of bad experiences when I was a kid. I went to Catholic school, didn't end up that well. Parents got divorced when I was a kid, a lot of different things.
Sure.
And it just kind of fell apart by the time I got confirmed when I was like 14.
Sure.
Can I just say sorry?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much it matters, but like, on behalf of Catholics who want to be Catholic and be good Catholics, I'm sorry about that. Like all of that stuff was a counter witness to the gospel. And that's the best argument against Catholicism. Like the failings of us as Catholics is, I think, the number one argument, people differ, but I think that's the best argument against us. Just I think the best argument for the church is the saints.
Maddie, we will send you a copy of Trent's book, Why We're Catholic, and perhaps there'll be something in there. But let me echo Joe's apology to you, and pray for us, and we will pray for you. Please give your address to Edgar, and we'll get that to you. Kane, RJ, Tori, Vanessa, Leanne, don't lose hope. The lightning round is coming. We will be right back after this.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
This is Dr. David Anders. Is God an angry God?
We answer questions like these every day on Call to Communion, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern.
Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live. Chris Check sitting in for Cy Kellett, who will be back tomorrow. 888-318-7884 to ask your question. To staff apologist Joe Heschmeyer, we're having a special 2-hour Middle American apologetics with Joe Heschmeyer. And, apropos, Kane in Michigan, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Kane, before you ask your question, I want to thank you for putting the Catholic Answers Live app on your phone and encourage everyone who's listening. Please put the Catholic Answers Live app on your phone. Go to the App Store. It's easy to do, and no matter where you are, if you are somewhere where there is not a terrestrial radio tower, or if it's 2 a.m. and Catholic Answers Live is not on, it doesn't matter. You can still get Catholic Answers Live and all the archives of the programs on the Catholic Answers Live app, and not just the live show, but also Council of Trent and Catholic Answers Focused and our growing family of podcasts. Kane in Michigan, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
I didn't lose hope.
Yeah, glory.
Good. So my question, about 5 years ago, I came to Christ. I started off non-denominational, and for about a year now, Reformed Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And just over the last month or so, I've had a great interest in learning about the early church and church fathers.
Good.
And then I stumbled onto Catholic Answers, and Joe and Trent have been like a wealth of information.
They are both.
And now that I believe the Catholic Church is the true church, if I don't convert, is that a grave sin?
Wow, that is a
First
good
of all,
question.
let me praise your journey. That sounds like an amazing 5 years, and I am humbled and honored to have played even a small role in that. The short answer to your question is yes.
Yeah.
Because if God is calling you to become Catholic, and it seems like he's the one in control of your journey, brother, if he's calling you to be Catholic and you say, like, no thanks, that's not good. That's a different situation than somebody who's like innocently in ignorance of the truth of the church. And so Lumen Gentium in paragraph 14 says, in explicit terms, he himself, Jesus, affirmed the necessity of faith and baptism, and thereby affirmed also the necessity of the church. For through baptism, as through a door, men enter the church. Whosoever, therefore, knowing that the Catholic Church was made necessary by Christ, would refuse to enter it or remain in it, could not be saved. So that's like the strongest kind of language you're going to find. That if you knowingly reject what you realize is the body of Christ, well, Ephesians 1 says that the church is the fullness of Christ. That's not just a no to the Catholic Church. That's ultimately a no to Jesus in his incarnation. Now, that's a strong teaching. I wouldn't say that if I didn't see clear biblical and church support for that.
Yeah. How do you think, Kane? I have to say, the fact that you even use the word grave matter suggests to me that you've kind of assented to the answer to this question.
Yeah, I felt like the Holy Spirit kind of led me to this path. The only thing that's really holding me back is kind of got roots planted in the church we're at now.
Sure.
And my wife hasn't come to the same revelation. So it's a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
You know, those are really tricky issues. I know different people have navigated those in different ways. So, sorry, Chris, you were going to say something.
Well, I was going to suggest to look up the great work that Marcus Grodi has done with the Coming Home Network, which of course started specifically to help Protestant pastors who wanted to become Catholic. And of course, in those cases, sure, there are family relationships, but they're leaving behind a congregation. They're often observed to be, as if they're betraying, if it's they're committing an act of disloyalty. But now he has, for seasons and seasons, that thing's been going for a couple of decades now, I think, right, Joe? Yes. Collected wonderful, wonderful stories, Kane, of men and women just like you who were feeling this obvious call from the Holy Spirit that was very clear to them, and yet had genuine reasons is the wrong word, but things, Joe, you help me with a better word, in their own life that made it difficult for them. You're not alone where you are, is what I'm trying to tell you. And you may get some reinforcement and some edification and some encouragement from looking up some previous episodes of that Coming Home Network.
If I could give another resource, I would say Scott Hahn's Rome Sweet Home. If you haven't read that yet, that's really good, not just for his kind of theological journey into the church, but also because he and his wife Kimberly moved at different speeds, and he had to learn like when to just relax and let God do his thing, right, and not try to like push her too much. That's often really helpful for people. I think. Maybe a couple pastoral things, just real quick, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead,
pastoral,
Joe.
I'm using loosely. There's no reason you couldn't do both in terms of going to Catholic Mass and going with your wife to, a Baptist or whichever kind of service. From the Catholic perspective, they're not the Mass, they're not the liturgy, but they're still a gathering of people trying to honor God. And so as long as you're not doing anything like taking communion or doing anything that suggests you're still in communion with them, going for the sake of your family is permitted, and it's the way some people kind of resolve it. The other thing is, like, Jesus praises the kind of sacrifice. So, he says whoever's given up house and wife and family and follows me will be rewarded. That kind of thing. Like, he does come to bring division in a way. And so following him is painful. It does involve some sacrifice. So it may be that you can't find an easy way to navigate that, in which case I would just say I would jump in both feet with trying to find community. It'll make it a little easier. And I would take real solace in the fact that that kind of real sacrifice is known to Jesus and that he promises to reward that.
Kane, if we can be of service to you as you continue your journey, shoot us an email here at radio@catholic.com, and we'll put you in touch with an apologist who can answer questions for you as you go on your way. I was going to add, and I think Rome Sweet Home is a great suggestion, Joe, our dear friend Patrick Madrid, who got his start at Catholic Answers, has those series of Surprised by Truth, right? I think they're called,
The first and the third one are especially good.
And they contain they contain stories of people who came into the Catholic Church and why and what they overcame to do it. And I think you'll get some inspiration from them, Kane. In the meantime, know that that you are in our prayers. And if we're in yours, that's good too. Please pray for us.
Since he mentioned the early church, can we throw in
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Give your address to Edgar, and we'll send you a stack of stuff, King. God bless you. RJ in Lubbock, Texas, home of the great Buddy Holly. Listening on EWTN Radio. It is true. Listening on EWTN Radio. Welcome, RJ, to Catholic Answers Live.
Hi. Crickets. First of all, I just want to say
that was both. Good. All right, RJ. It's going to be hard to follow that.
Yes, thank you both for everything you do. God bless you both, and all the apologists there at Catholic Answers. You guys are just amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, RJ.
My question is, no problem. So it's to my understanding that we as Catholics are justified by faith through works, and Protestants believe they're justified by faith alone. So the other day I heard Jimmy Akin talking about this subject on a debrief he was having on a recent debate he had against Jordan Cooper. And he said something along the lines of the formula of faith alone does actually work if it's done through love. Now, I don't know, that's not really quoting him verbatim, but that's kind of how I understood it. And I really don't want to misrepresent Jimmy's position on that.
No, it's a really good question.
We can clarify.
If I can get some clarity on that.
Yeah, a great question. And a lot of the debate about justification, I think this is an issue in which Catholics and most Protestants are much closer than either side tends to give the other side credit for being. Because I'll tell you what each side thinks the other side is saying, but isn't. Catholics tend to think that, and obviously not all Catholics think this, but there's often a kind of misperception that Protestants think as long as you say I believe in Jesus, then it doesn't matter if you live a Christian life or not. And you'll occasionally find Protestants who say that. That's not the traditional Protestant view. And there's a reason, because if all you have to do to be saved is believe that Jesus is Lord, the devil would be saved because he believes that. He knows that. He just rejects it. James makes this point in the epistle. On the other hand, Protestants imagine that Catholics are saying we need to bring our own good works that we're somehow doing apart from Christ. And that plus faith in him means that he'll reward us with salvation or reward us with justification. And that doesn't work either, because Jesus is very clear. Apart from me, you can do nothing. There's no such thing as a good work that isn't done in Christ. And so in that sense, both sides are worried. The other side is saying something heretical that I don't think the other side actually is saying. There are still differences in the Catholic and Protestant view, but they're a lot closer than they seem. So I am guessing here that Jimmy is referring to Benedict XVI's formulation, where he said faith alone is fine as long as it doesn't oppose charity. That if what you mean by faith alone means that you're not bringing your own good works to the table, that's fine as long as you're not diminishing the necessity of divine charity, because you need faith, hope, and love. So I would approach the question this way. just to cut through a lot of the conflicting way we're using justification, faith, works, good works, works of the law, all of these things, there's like differences in nuance, sometimes totally differences in meaning. I just asked 3 questions. Number 1, can you go to heaven without loving God and neighbor? And the answer is no. 1 John 3 says, he who does not love remains in death. And so another way to put that would be like, is faith alone without love sufficient? And St. Paul says, no, 1 Corinthians 13. If I have all faith so as to remove mountains but have not love, I am nothing. He doesn't say, I'm nothing, but I'm still saved. It's like, no, that's impossible. Faith without love is not enough. It's not good enough. So that's the first question. You need charity to be saved. You need love of God and love of neighbor. To then pivot towards works and everything like that, well, can you love God without keeping his commandments? That's my second question. And the answer is no. 2 John, if this is love, that we follow his commandments. 1 John, we know that we're children of God when we love God and obey his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments. So you can't say, well, I've got faith and I love God, but I don't keep his commandments. And then finally, like, can you keep God's commandments without doing good works? Well, obviously not, because Jesus commands good works. So that's how I would kind of frame it, is yes, we are saved entirely through Jesus and what he is doing, but he is doing something by giving us faith, hope, and charity. And we can't say, well, I'm going to hold on to the faith because that's easy, and I'm going to ignore the charity because that requires me to do something, because that doesn't work. We have to actually live charity. And so, yeah, I'd keep it about that simple. So if by faith alone you mean something consistent with everything I just said, then great. If you're trying to avoid Pelagianism, then we're fine with that. Faith alone is maybe a misleading formulation, but it's not heretical unless you're denying the necessity of charity for salvation.
RJ, I want to see if I can get the callers behind you. Did you have a quick follow-up? Okay.
Appreciate that.
Okay, great. All right, Glory. Good. All right, call back again. The lovely Sarah is giving me the break motion. My friends, everything is on sale at shop.catholic.com. Free shipping, over $50. School of Apologetics, all courses half off. And bulk books, $3 each if you order by the case, including Joe Heschmeyer's The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. Get 20 of them and give them out to all your friends at Easter right back after this.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Beyond Damascus with Dan Dematteis and Aaron Richards is our show for young adults.
Everybody's talking about encounter. Everybody's talking about that mountaintop experience. What we fail to often talk about is what happens after, what happens beyond that Damascus moment.
Jesus Christ is calling all of us to be missionary disciples, disciples of Jesus who are on mission to bring the kingdom of God here and now on this earth.
Beyond Damascus with Dan Dematteis and Aaron Richards, Saturday at 8 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
A lot of people think that street evangelization involves yelling out of a bullhorn telling people that they're going to hell. Not so with St. Paul's Street Evangelization. Our methods are non-confrontational and effective. We simply offer information on the Catholic faith along with rosaries, miraculous medals, and prayer. Pope Francis wrote about how beautiful it is to see street preachers joyfully bringing Jesus to every corner of the earth. Street evangelization is fun and fruitful. Join us today at streetevangelization.com.
Catholic Answers Live. Chris Check sitting in for Cy Kellett. Joe Heschmeyer is my guest. Joe, we're going to get these 4 calls in.
All right, let's lightning round.
Tori, Sterling, Virginia, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. How can we be of service?
Hi there. I was just wondering, how do we know so much about angels? Is it all in Scripture, or do we know elsewhere too?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah. Sorry, can I ask a question? What do you mean? What do we know so much about them? I think the remarkable things about angels, we actually don't know that much at all.
I guess, like I was just thinking about earlier today, like how, like, we know angels have an intellect and a will, and you know, they don't, I guess, really have like a sex, like they're not male or female, just kind of intricate stuff like that. I guess.
Yeah, that's a great question. So some of that is coming from Scripture. Some of that is coming from reason. Just like, what do we know about spiritual beings? Well, we know they don't have bodies, and we know sex is a bodily reality. We know that the non-bodily realities are intellect and will, and the way angels appear in Scripture, they very clearly seem to have intellects. They very clearly seem to have wills. And then we also know experientially, because there's a few angels we deal with pretty regularly. Our guardian angel in a positive way, and then the tempter, like demons and the devil. When they tempt us, we get a pretty clear sense that they have a will, a rotten one, and they have an intellect. That they're able to do things that require intellect and will. So some of what we know is, I think, from experience. There's also a lot of folk traditions about angels, which that stuff I would take a lot of that with a grain of salt. We know there are 7 angels that stand in the presence of God. We know the names of 3 of them in Scripture, and then you'll find people who try to claim the names of the other 4. I would leave all that stuff alone. But yeah, that's the basics. And then there's a lot of other stuff that's speculative. We hear of angels, archangels, thrones, dominions, powers, principalities, cherubim, and seraphim, all mentioned in Scripture. Do we know the order in the hierarchy? No, but a lot of theologians have tried to guess.
Tori, we're going to send you our 20 answers on angels and demons if you give your address to the great and powerful Edgar. Joe, interestingly, angels, of course, are not something peculiar to Christianity. Plato wrote a lot and thought a lot about angels, for example.
Yeah, I mean, cross-culturally, I think it's very remarkable. I think if I were an atheist, I would be taken aback by the fact that you find people unconnected who clearly have these experiences of angels and demons alike, in the New World and in the Old World alike.
Yeah. Vanessa in Oregon, listening on Ave Maria Radio. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I'm so happy to be talking with you, Chris and Joe, and thank you for all you do.
God bless you.
I have a question. I was just talking. Thank you. I was just talking with a friend, and we were talking about the 5 first Saturdays, and I started to tell her, and then I was thinking, okay, well, maybe I better check with Catholic Answers to find out. And I looked online, and the 4th one says, keep Mary company for 15 minutes, meditating on the 15 minutes of the rosary. And that wasn't one that I had a question with. I wasn't sure, if you could receive Holy Communion, later that day or and here it says within 24 hours, either way, which is great. So I didn't know that. But the one I thought I knew, which was keeping Mary company, I thought it was any one of the 15. But here it says meditating on the 15 mysteries in 15 minutes.
Yeah, we're gonna help you, Vanessa. Joe, how does somebody go after these first Saturday devotions without, being too worried about whether they've checked all the right boxes in the right order?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that God is not a legalist.
Right.
And so when you are trying to do a good thing, you don't have to worry that you didn't cross the right T or do the right I. If you decide to do the joyful mysteries on a Friday, you're not going to be punished for that. Something like that. But your question is specific enough that when I saw it in the call screen, I had to go look it up. And Sister Lucia herself would do one mystery per week. So she wasn't doing all 15 mysteries. And she makes that explicitly clear. So I think if you want to do it her way, she's sincere. Mary's not going to be like, oh, why did you listen to the person who told you about this?
And of course that stands to reason that it's probably more profitable to try to clear your mind and concentrate on just one thing. How's that, Vanessa?
Makes sense.
Glory.
Well, you know what? That makes sense. But I just wanted to say it says that here in Catholic Answers online.
Oh.
Well, that's an unreputable website.
Yeah, I who's in charge of that?
If would you send to radio@catholic.com? Would you send that article?
Yeah, send the URL.
Make sure it doesn't
the
need
link.
to be tweaked.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that it's saying the right thing. We'll update it. We'll get Joe Heschmeyer to update it.
Okay, that sounds good.
You see all the good work you've done here, Vanessa?
That's a relief.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right.
And I'll send this send it to your copy to your website.
You can go to radio@catholic.com.
How about your email?
Or you can go through the website. Radio@catholic.com is easiest.
Yep. God bless you, Vanessa.
Okay.
And when you're doing those
God
first
bless you,
Saturday
too.
devotions, pray for Catholic Answers, okay?
You know what? I will do that.
Good. I know Our Lady wants you to do that. I feel pretty confident in saying that.
It's still valid either way.
That's
but
right.
It's still good.
God bless you, Vanessa. Leanne, also in Oregon, watching on the Catholic Answers YouTube channel. How do you like my flannel shirt, Leanne? Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Thank you, Chris. And just for your information, I'm hard of hearing.
Okay.
I've been all my life, so that's why my voice is the way it is.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead with your question.
I spent all my adult life in two Protestant religions that believe in a great apostasy.
Mm-hmm.
One is LDS, the other is Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
They teach that future revelation from God will come down through the hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
the governing body, or the first presidency.
Yes.
I'm going to be coming into the Catholic Church later this year, but my question is, what role does private revelation coming through ordinary Catholics, if you will, like Our Lady of Fatima,
Sure.
and other such revelation, I guess
What are you asking? What's the role of that?
Or by what authority?
Yeah, what's the role of it, and how can I source, what can I source for an authority on this?
Yeah.
In other words, how do I explain it to my Protestant friends?
Very thoughtful question.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And first of all, let me just say, praise God for you coming home.
Amen.
That's wonderful. And second, the distinction between public and private revelation is this. What we're required to believe is what God has revealed in Jesus Christ. And that ends in the first century. Jude 1, it's only one chapter of Jude, but Jude chapter 1, verse 3 says, I found it necessary to write appealing to you to contend for the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints. There is no subsequent revelation in the post-apostolic era, which is why we know, LDS and the like are proclaiming something that isn't true. The age of prophecy in that sense is over. But the other thing is that doesn't mean God falls silent. It just means he's not giving us anything new that's going to be binding on everyone. Our Bible's not going to get any longer. We're not going to have some new teaching that's given by like an angelic revelation or a Marian apparition or a new prophet none of those things are going to change the teaching of the church. Private revelation, the role of private revelation is twofold. One, to better illustrate what's already been revealed in public revelation. The need to do penance or the need for faith. These things which we already believe are often reiterated in private revelations. And two, sometimes there'll be a message specific to a certain time, place, people, and the like. As Catholics, we are free to ignore all of that if we want to. The church will look into any private revelations and conclude either one, this is not from God, or two, this seems to be from God and is okay to believe it. But there's no third category where it becomes mandatory to believe it. And that's why it's private. If it helps your devotion to take seriously the appearances of Mary at Fatima, and if that helps you understand Christianity and helps your Catholic faith, then great. If it's an obstacle for your Catholic faith, leave it alone.
Leanne, is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
All right.
I appreciate it.
All right.
God bless you.
Yeah, and again, praise God for your journey. This is welcome news. We love to hear these stories. Joe, that was a fast 2 hours.
Yeah, it was very fast. Sorry to Susan. I think that's the one call we
That's
missed.
okay. We're going to get her email, and we are going to be. I'm going to make you get in touch with her. I have that. I have that authority.
Yes.
My friends, good news. Cy Kellett will be back in this chair tomorrow. My prayers for you for a fruitful Lent. What does Sai say? Jesus Christ is the light of the nations. See you in 22 hours. God bless.